put thoughts in our heads either. One of the clearest illustrations of the Bible is found in the book of Daniel, starting in Daniel 2, all the way through Daniel 49. To understand it completely, you will also have to continue to read all of that. It's a very deep study. Now that's kind of the start off thing there. Then I said here, at this point in writing, I will share my personal experiences and family life experiences and what some call supernatural. It's not supernatural. God has allowed my family to experience these things in our walk down the road of life as a Christian family. In 1952, at age 18, I was a senior in high school. And I met a guy that had just gotten involved in boxing in the Golden Glove. I went with him to a house where they trained, and got to training a little bit. Decided to get into the Golden Glove. Every time I did have a bout, my whole head, all the way around, was sore. I had a headache, terrible headache. And of course, that's from getting your brain hit the sides of your skull. And I did that for a little while, and then God told me one day, no more boxing. So I stopped boxing. There was a woman that rented an apartment in this house where we worked out. We lived upstairs. And she liked wrestling and boxing both, and she followed it on the news and different things. And she saw these boys coming in there and praying. And heard some names mentioned, and one of them was my name, John Fox. And she remembered that name. Well, many years later, after my wife and I had been through all kinds of stuff, and found out one day that her mother, who lived in that place, that liked wrestling and boxing, was my future wife's brother. So many years after that, when I met her and we married, I met my mother-in-law that I had met years ago. So God, has a way of showing you this, showing you that. Kind of plans out your life for you if you're ready. And one day I met a little gal, and she, we spent a little time together and just decided to get married. And about that same time, I got a call or a letter from the military, report for induction. So instead of going to reporting, I went to a recruiter and got aircraft and helicopter training. And I went through basic, Paso, and I went through that helicopter training. And then I went to Hawaii, and some of the people went somewhere else. Anyway, after I went to Hawaii, this little gal I married came home, and she wanted a baby this time, but she didn't ever get pregnant. One day she got homesick. I let her go home, but she didn't go home. She either met a guy or she ever left Hawaii or any somewhere else. Anyway, she went off with a guy trying to get pregnant. We didn't test it on full service. But anyway, he went through 2 or 3 guys. And I came home on emergency that evening. Got attached to Fort Sam. I ran a hobby shop out there for a little while, and then I was at Brooks Field, and their helicopters and aircraft. And so I was kind of angry. Bad at women thought they were terrible. She had just made a move out. And so I took up bowling. And I really liked it because I really wanted to get somebody. And throwing that ball and flatter those pins helped me. So I ended up bowling 3 or 4 nights a week. Then I started some teams. Anyway, one night I was sitting in there late at night at Herman's in San Antonio. And I saw this redhead walk in. Good looking gal. She had on one of those form-fitting knit dresses they used to wear that showed off the figure pretty good and fit kind of tight. She had on high heels that matched, and that red hair was everything was the perfect place. And I was like, man. And so in a little bit, I went over and I said, she also had a cable for Fox cable. And I just couldn't believe this gal. Well, anyway, I got stars in my eyes or something. But anyway, I went over there, ordered a cup of coffee and sat down. And then about that time, I saw her hand, she had a ring on her finger. And I blew up. I said, is that real? Or you don't give a damn? And she exploded. He picked me up, told me, I'm down here for a course to see my mother. Said going blank over. Anyway, she was a stockbroker, and she lived in Missouri. Anyway, she was down here to see her mother and get a divorce. But anyway, I felt like a fool dumping on her like that, and I apologized over and over. And I finally told her, I said, let me find this piece of paper. Okay. I said, lady, I don't even know your name, but I think there's a reason we met today. It was not an accident. If you're willing to investigate this with me, I'd like to find out what God is doing in my life and possibly in yours. I need to know what his reason and plan is for me. And you may want to know his plan for you. I've made mistakes on my own. I'm looking for direction for the first time in my life. I suspect it's the same for you. Unhappy is not of God. How would you feel about having an evening dinner or supper with me? I don't know what they call those two meals in Missouri or Illinois, but there's a Jim's Coffee Shop. Is a favorite for coffee and for biscuits, for sausage gravy. If you do forgive me, I promise not to be rude again. I should tell you my name is John Fox. She said, okay, John, I'll meet you there. My name is Barbara. I was surprised at her okay answer. I was definitely in over my head. We headed for our first dinner. Wow. Did you ever see the movie of Bambi? Playing arouses many things in that are in the same or similar class with animals. I thought quietly to myself, I guess this really is love. I was still, it was still winter in Texas, but close enough to spring to around. We both had a hurtful past, and she was really a stockbroker living in St. Louis. We spent time together several evenings and she left, drove back to St. Louis. She wrote me, then called, asked if I'd pick her up at the depot, train depot. Her mom needed help. I'll be happy to. And I picked her up, didn't talk much, took her back to the train a few days later, and didn't really spend any time with her. Barbara moved back to San Antonio shortly after that, and soon made friends with three of my sisters, Virginia, Pat, and Joe. One Sunday, they invited Barbara to go to church with them. She did go and heard Pastor Mike Fanning preach the salvation message. I have no idea what he preached. There in the church, she felt God reach out to her, and she knew it was not a lie. Barbara fell in love on that beautiful Sunday, baptized the following week. I could see the change. Barbara was in love for the very first time, and she was not in love with me, not yet. She was baptized, and her life was changed forever. Barbara's early years during the World Depression. Barbara and most of her family grew up in Uvalde, Honda. Barbara's dad, Travis Timberlake, and his brother, Cooney, were 50% Cherokee Indian. Their dad was 100% Indian. He lived like he was still on the reservation. He was abusive, unloving, and treated Barbara and her younger brother Buzzy bad. He took them snake hunting, teased them with rattlesnakes. When World War II began, Barbara and her younger brother Buzzy went to live with the grandparents in Honda for many years until she completed high school and graduated the same year that I graduated. Barbara got out of town, away from work, from some relatives as quickly as she could. She was tall, looked mature, lived lied about her age to the airline so she could get a stewardess job. Later, she became a stockbroker and traveled in the Midwest. She seemed out of my class, but that was okay with me. I was instantly in love with someone I did not know. What Pastor Fanning preached or said does not matter. Barbara heard Jesus say, I love you. She had heard that from men, but Jesus is real. He was sincere, and she heard him say it. We both have been through bad marriages, always on guard and did not trust each other or anyone very much. I did not want to be hurt again by a female. Turns out she was just a country girl that had guts, did well in a career, and walked away from all the abuse in years past. She really loved her mom and grandparents. She had her own battle in a divorce, never talked about past marriages. We were both looking for a storybook made, but did not know it. Barbara had more hurts and scars pent up inside than I did. Most of all, we both wanted real love and children. We were both too ambitious for our own good. Barbara loved truth and honesty more than anything else. Barbara, from a child, had dreamed of having a husband as loving as her daddy Tom, her grandfather. She wanted a mate that she could love forever, believe in, trust, encourage, build up. I had been looking for her all my life. My dad instantly treated Barbara like a daughter. She was feisty and Dad hit it off. They kidded a lot. One day, Dad said, Barbara, you should marry Johnny and have some fun. We had 5 daughters and 2 sons. Johnny and James neither are married yet. And we need some grandbaby Foxes around. It didn't take much encouragement. We were in love, but afraid to admit it or believe it. Thus, the die was cast and set. I asked, she said yes. We got married in a private service at Trinity Baptist Church in Pastor Butler Fanning's office. November 26, 1961, 60 years ago. For a short time, we lived at my mother and dad for a few weeks until I could rough it in our little cabin. She wanted to have a baby, but nothing happened the first year. Unknown to me, Barbara went to a specialist. Found out her tubes were twisted or plugged and she couldn't conceive. She went to a Dr. Rudian. He did something, I don't know what, in his lab, and she returned to work. Never told me this, because he didn't want me to be disappointed that it didn't work, I guess. Anyway, months later, after the first son was on the way, she was a tight-lipped girl, mind of her own. I was working 2 jobs to make ends meet, a day job at Dad's shop and a night job at the transit company in San Antonio. Coming home in the wee hours of the morning, we now rested in our cabin or house in the country, building on it each weekend. One morning when I came home from working most of the night, Barbara was scared and trembling, and she told me a creature sitting in a tree right outside the glass sliding door, making fun of her, calling her dumb and stupid, and putting her down. My first thought was the girl's lost her mind. I told her, you need to see a doctor. She was frightened and talked to a psychologist at Trinity Baptist Church, but she didn't tell him she was seeing a demon. So he did not help her. She made it through months of pregnancy. And Brimmer John, our firstborn, died January 27, 63. And Barbara no longer was alone and never ever saw the demon. 2 years later, number two son, April 13th, 65. And then Janice Joe, which some of you know, arrived December 27, 67. Three of them roughly 2 years apart. The demon Barbara had seen when she was expecting our first child was the first demon sighting or incident in her life, but I did not see it. Barbara's cousin, Dorothy Nickett, arrived, retired from civil service, and bought a house in Van Buren. Why she moved there, only God knew. His plan was about to unfold. He had many years now since it has been many years now since that happened. We live in a place in Pipe Creek that we own, and Barbara shopped in Bandera, usually once or twice a week. Anyway, she went to see Dorothy. She was retired from the civil service, bought that house, and she belonged to the she was a member of the White Brotherhood. It was a demonic church in California. And she had a lot of false teachings from there. She wanted to know about Jesus. But when Barbara realized that, she had her Bible with her all the time. She started ministering to Dorothy. and shared lots of things with her. And they talked about how to get rid of a demon, things like that. Well, anyway, over a period of time that she ministered to Dorothy knew that she was going to die. She just knew it in her spirit. But she wanted to know Jesus. So she, one day, Barbara went by there and the door was locked. She could hear Dorothy in there, but Dorothy couldn't walk. She crawled to the door, finally got it open, and couldn't get up, couldn't stand, couldn't do anything. Barbara put her in a ambulance and took her to Hondo, the hospital there. Anyway, he was in pretty bad shape, and Barbara left him there, and she said, I'm kind of losing my coordination for this thing. But anyway, she anyway, Barbara ministered to her there, and she got sick from the hospital. And Barbara went there and said, how do you get rid of it? He said, well, you just cast it out and tell it to leave it. He said, anyway, she had told her that before she went to the hospital. Then she went to the hospital. Dorothy said, you remember what you told me about how to get rid of people? She said, well, I told this thing to get out there right now. And it flew, it just tore out of there, and it never came back. Barbara said, well, that demon was after your soul, wanted to kill you and take you to hell. And so they said the prayer, and she accepted the Lord right there in that hospital. Barbara went home, came back the next day, and Dorothy had died during the night. Well, Barbara's mother had spent the night at her sister's in San Antonio. And she and Dorothy lived together years ago. So that demon that came after Dorothy, Barbara and Mother, my wife's mother, she came home the next day. She was still driving in those days. She came home the next day and she said, "Man, I had this terrible thing." She said, "This horrible looking thing came in the room, said it screaming and hollering at me, and said, I just pulled a sheet over my head and ignored it. And said, I didn't sleep all night." The Barbara didn't say anything, but she knew that was the demon that came from Dorothy. Huh. That same night at my ranch, boy that worked for me, a Mexican boy in Mexico, lived in my barn. He came up to the house. His shirt was ripped. He was terrified. Couldn't speak English, but you knew something happened. And then this demon had showed up. My son came out the house and heard all this, and he saw something later, but he never said anything about it. So there have been some demons sighted by several people from the very beginning. And let's see here, my work. Okay. The day of her funeral, we stopped at her house to look for a will. We did not find it. We did find a very recent, handwritten one laying on the bed. That's interesting because Dorothy knew time was short and she would soon be seeing Jesus face to face, leaving her will on that bed where Barbara would find it. She left everything that she owned to her cousin, Ribby. Along one wall of that living room, I found demonic and occult books stacked 2 feet high, 6 feet long. I came back the next day to burn them. They were gone. I was told that Ribby's husband, Jewish husband, had donated them to the library in Bandera. Janice, I told her about her spending the night there. During that same night, that same demon, where a friend is, came to our ranch, and I told you about the journey. There was a hog barn. All of these people kept that saw something that said, looked like a hog or a dog. There was a big barn on our place, one for cows, what have you, and then there was a huge one that was built to raise hogs in. Designed to raise hogs, very clean and sanitary way, maybe 100 or more at a time. There were outside beacons, water stations where hogs were raised outside before that barn was built. I can't help but wonder, is this in some way a reminder of home stories in the book of Luke 8:27 through 33 and in Acts 19:11 through 20, where Jesus spoke to a man possessed by an demon. In the scripture, Jesus said, "What is your name?" The demon said, "Legion. We are many." The demon pleaded, "Son of God Most High, what have I to do with me? Torment us not, allow us to enter the pigs on the hillside. Jesus gave permission. The demons entered the hogs. The hogs didn't want all those hogs either. They entered the entire herd. They ran off the cliff into the sea and drowned. When the townspeople learned that, they were watching and listening and saw what happened to the hogs. They were scared, burned their idols, and prayed, sought God. I did some research on hogs and dogs and found that hogs and dogs work very well with each other. They both are extremely intelligent creatures. I've got all kinds of stuff in here about hogs, which I won't go into reading all of it. Where I live right there, I live in a boat. There's a lot of stories about what house and things. Here where I live right now, here, Castle, kind of outdated town. Two nights in the same week, not consecutive nights, but one night and a few nights later, hogs came into my yard and ripped it all to pieces. They've multiplied in this country and in other countries too, where there are just millions of them. We have farmers that hire people to kill them here in this country, that destroy their crops. So they're totally out of control all over the world. That's interesting in regard to saving the law. There's some here I'm not. There's a lot of Jim's coffee shops here. One at Blanco and 410 was kind of our hangout, close to my shop. And we ministered there to a lot of people. There was a kid there named Elliot Garner. He owned some pornography stores in San Antonio. And we were ministering to him there at that restaurant. And my brother and his family were praying for him, going to see him, and he got tired of it. He kind of got fed up with them feeling harassed by him. And he told Dane, he said, I asked Jesus to forgive me for my sin. And I turned my business over to my employees. I don't go there anymore. I just pay the bill, collect, but I don't go there anymore. And he said, well, you're close to a school and you're causing damage to children. He said, I told God if you did not listen and did not stop doing this damage to people, I prayed and asked him to take you out if you did not respond. He laughed and he walked away. 2 nights later, a few days later, he and his wife were sitting in his living room. He grabbed his pistol, said, watch this, stuck it to his head, and blew his brains out. That happened. Dottie Ashmore was Judd Ashmore's daughter, who used to be a weatherman in San Antonio. Y'all may have heard him. She was a troubled girl, and she was a schoolmate of my oldest son, brother. He was happy that he had just accepted Jesus himself. And he had to share it. He told Dottie about it one day at school. And Dottie was real troubled about things, about her life. He told her about it. And then he told his buddy, Harry Grant, who was his schoolmate, told him about accepting Jesus. Told him, I can't be running around here anymore because I'm a Christian. He told Harry about it. Harry wanted to be a Christian too, so they said this in the prayer, and he got real excited about it. And so he had told Dottie, and got Harry saved, and his brother, and his sister, and my daughter. Oh, a bunch of them got really excited about Jesus. And Barbara wanted a Christian school, and she prayed about that. And a few days later, we went to church in Kerrville. They said, well, we've decided to have a church. If we have the money by a certain date, that we can build a classroom and get and start a school before school began. We were going to have a Christian school. And that happened. They started a school. Well, my oldest son, Peter, and Harry, who had both become Christians, were seniors. So they went there, they're seniors in that Christian school. Congratulations. And then my younger son and my daughter Joe, and Harry, Richard's brother, and Connie. They all went to that Christian school. Well, anyway, let me see. Okay, then Dottie came by our ranch one day after she had heard about this, about Jesus. And she accepted the Lord in our driveway. And a few days later, she was killed in a car wreck. Disgusting. Barbara went to the funeral, so did Joe. And John Ashmore, Barbara went to her and told him, said, a few days ago, Dottie accepted the Lord in our house. And accepted the Lord. Judd thanked her, appreciated him for telling him that. We don't know if he was a Christian or knew the Lord at all, but he heard him. Then, after the next thing, Barbara and Joe, we had a milk cow. And when they'd go out to milk, they'd go, oh, she'd hear well, faster. Boy, she'd come running, had a bell on that bell, would be swinging. Milk would just be pouring from the bag. And when she got there, they put her in there, they washed her down in the bag, and loved on her and talked to her and sang to her. And then the milk would almost just pour. Didn't have to. If anybody walked in the room, milk stopped. But that cow loved it. After they milked her, then they'd love her and sing to her and everything. And they loved everything like it, all the animals we had. And most jerseys are kind of a blonde or light color. But there's a very few black jerseys in the world. And they wanted a black jersey cow. So they checked and they found the black Jersey bull. And they took her and had her artificially inseminated with this sperm. And they were praying the whole time. When she finally had that cat, it wasn't black. It was red. But it had a black stripe down its back. Right across the spine. And they thought, well, that's okay. That's not praise. We thank the Lord for it. Anyway, as that calf started growing, its hair started changing color. The hair on its body started getting darker and darker and darker and darker. Right down the back, started getting lighter. And that was curious. Finally, her whole body was black, and that stripe was the light color, and kind of a tannish color. And they said, "Oh God, you're so wonderful. Only you could have thought of something like this to tease us with." And they prayed and thanked you for that. So that was a miracle from God. Okay. I'm sorry this is so long. And I'll tell about a street evangelist coming to San Antonio and meeting a couple that we knew that rent a joint downtown. They got saved through his ministry. We helped them get into going to churches and they joined church and really fell in love with the Lord. Got ordained and started a church, which we helped them with a lot. My brother, Ron, sister, and I, and Joe. And they did well with it. I went on became missionaries, went to some countries a few times. And I decided to have a barbecue for them when they came back. And I bought a bunch of wild pig that were what we call wieners, just been weaned and they're starting to eat food. Anyway, I unloaded them in a little pen. Yeah, they're about 100-foot pen. One side of that, all three sides of it was just open land. But one fence there was on the neighbor's property, and the brush was so thick that you couldn't possibly walk through it. Anyway, we had a thick fence around that, so animals couldn't get out. And anyway, I started unloading those hogs so I could fat them, so I could butcher them. And I realized that my electric fence deal was not turned on. Well, all this open land, they didn't want that. They wanted that fixed up. They had it good. I realized it wasn't on. I ran over and turned it on. But by the time I got there, it had gone under that fence and into that wooded area. And we couldn't go in there to get them. Anyway, we prayed about that. And just about dark. In the meantime, I had turned that fence on when I went over there, and they were gone. And they won't go through an electric fence out here. If they've ever been through one, they will go through it. Anyway, it was on. But they were all over there, and I forgot all about that. And we prayed, and then just about dark, I heard a squeal. Ran over there, and first pig had come back, stuck his head under that fence. When that current hit him, he screamed and went in there. And one after the other, they kept coming back, which they wouldn't have done if they weren't scared of all that thick area. Anyway, they all came back. And one wasn't there. So the next morning they came back to. Anyway, I butchered them and did all the stuff. Had a big victory party for them. And they shared their all the good things happened over the mission field. And anyway, then my brother-in-law Tommy and I started his church. God prompted him to do that. He'd been fixing stuff for other people for years. Anyway, he still had a place in Mexico where he was gonna build a building for mission. He had a school bus full of building materials, and he took it to the border and was going to go across, and they arrested him for not declaring security. He had gone there many times doing that, and they usually had let him go into ministry. But anyway, they put him in jail. They didn't put my sister in jail, they put him in jail. And so that night, in there with a bunch of other guys that had been there a long time, Tommy said, well, I'll be out of here tomorrow. And they said, oh, you won't be out here. We've been in here 2 months. Can't get out. I said, oh, I'll be out of here. So anyway, I started to go to bed, and there were rats everywhere. And Tommy asked the Lord, Father, he asked him, do something about these rats. I'm not going to be able to sleep. And just at dark, a big old tomcat walked in and laid on the foot of his bed. He never had any problem with rats. Anyway, a missionary man, a couple he had met on the road one time in Mexico with CD radio talking to people, talking to each other. They got to talking to each other. Anyway, they found out they were both Christians. They went and ate something. And he became close friends with these 2 oil men that were over in that car. And for years, they supplied him with whatever he needed, whether it was money, whether it was cars that he could write them, value them so they could use them in their taxes. Anyway, he called, well, his name was Lamar Thomas. And Lamar sent him the money the next day. They got out of jail. And he headed over and built this building he was going to build. And that was, the end of that part. That church that they had that barbecue later and heard all the stories from the trip down the foreign country. And they named that church TNT. They were borrowing. He was an exotic dancer and all that kind of stuff. He was a carnival guy, knew all about that kind of stuff. Anyway, they named it TNT here on the New Testament church. They did pretty well. Okay. One day, I had a crew pour a slab on the side of my house. It looked like rain, and there was a drip or two. The cement was ordered, was on the way from San Antonio, 50 miles out there. And I had a friend out there going to oversee that little job. And he told my Barbara, walked out of the house, he said, Barbara, we can't afford this. It's going to rain and with cement would be wood. And she said, well, let's pray. So she took out her hand and joined hands with him, these boys that were going to help him. And she prayed. Father, it's too late. It should already be here. I ask you, Father, to cause angels to come and spread over this place. And let no rain come or damage the concrete. We ask this in the name of Jesus. She got in her car and headed east to go to Vernon. About a mile down the road, rain all the way to Vernon. Not one drop had fallen, and the concrete had been poured. She unloaded her groceries, got back in the car, and drove west to Bandera. It rained all the way there and back. No rain in our perfect concrete. Never heard. Tom and I both started having health problems of various kinds. My brother James taught and preached a few times while I was in the hospital a day or two. I preached there until Tom and Joe could not go any further, health-wise, medical bills and maintenance of the church, and other properties needed repair. Tom sold the church to a group from Mexico. We held services with Tom's home for a time. And my sister, Jo, got sick and graduated before Tom, and he died soon after. I think Satan thought he could get to me with all this. It was obvious when I realized his demons were after my family. But there was no way they could pull us. God then showed me I have his assurance in my spirit. My family is in no danger and are covered by the blood of Jesus. Satan has no place in us, no more power over us. My family, property, finances are our lives. I want everyone to hear my voice. Don't start to wonder or worry about demons. When demons try to roar or make a sound in the presence of the Christian, it's only a baby kittens weep meow, looking for baby's milk. Satan and demons are not a threat. They have no power unless God allows them, like he did with Job. The Bible said Job wavered not. If you're strong in your faith and have educated yourself in how to study and stand control when it comes to Satan, he can't touch a Christian or your family. You have the authority, the power to stand in the gap for your family. Don't talk to him or argue with him. That's what he wants you to do. Just say, skip or get out of here in Jesus' name. Don't say anything else. Ladies at the Lake Hill Baptist Church came and walked our ranch property lines, prayed and cast out and delivered the place from any demonic influence, memory, or occupation or activities. I've never seen a demon or an angel as far as I know, and would prefer not to. I have seen a demonic flow from the eyes of persons with evil activity, harassment, possession, and torment. Sometimes that glow is like a lust-filled glow. Sometimes it's a terror, anger, scary looking glow, like a flickering beam of light. Just remember, we really do live in an amazing, beautiful, wonderful spiritual world. God created it, everything in it. Just because He really does love us, His creation. We slow down after like this, look back at my life. So many things come up. We so often get redirected with God's plan for our life. I think He really has a plan for each one of us. We often interfere. Get off track to what God has intended for us. As I shared before, when I was 18, I took up boxing in 1952. And I found out later, years later, in 1959 or 60, that's Barbara's mother that lived there. That was 7 years after I was okay, and then I tell about getting drafted, getting married and stuff. Through it all, I finally realized God was more in control of my life than I was. God had, in fact, protected me from several wrong marriages, children that would not be in God's plan for me. God had protected me, even though I had tried everything to bring curse on my life. God stopped me. Is God great or what? We know this week, last night I stayed up half the night trying to make a short version so I didn't have to wait for it. But I ran out of paper in the printer.